Hi, can I welcome everybody to tonight's meeting? My name's John McDonnell. I'm a Labour MP for Hayes and Harlington. So welcome to everybody. This is one of a series of meetings that Paul Holmes has been doing. We've been organising with a whole range of different groups within our union, different sections all around the country as well, via Zoom, obviously online. It's a pity we can't meet physically, but let's hope that will come soon. And the purpose really is for Paul to explain just why he's standing for General Secretary of UNISON and his programme and the way he wants to see the union develop. And it's been, to be honest, for me, it's been fascinating. Just so you know, I've been a UNISON member since the union was founded. I was a member of NUPE before that. I was a NUPE shop steward. So I've been in the union, UNISON and NUPE now, I suppose, over 40 years. I've been really interested in these meetings. It's been fascinating. The other night in one of the meetings, Paul said he was humbled about listening to some of the issues that people were raising, the experience I was as well. I just thought it phenomenal. It really was. People have been turning up and listening to Paul, and then we've had other speakers too, as tonight, and then we've had questions, and people have been explaining to us exactly what it's like for them at the moment in the situation that they're in, working the whole range of public services and that we represent. But the key thing for them, I think it's the same as me really, I think people are realising this is most probably, well for me I think it is, I think it's the most important election we've had in decades, because it will decide the future of our union. And I think we need to be clear about what we want for the future of our union. It is about, for me, it's about reclaiming control of the union for our members. Paul is standing as the members' candidate, and he's called that by us for a reason, because he's a lay member with vast experience, of course. He's a lay member, and for me, it means that our members will actually be able to have someone at General Secretary who recognises that they are a servant of the union, not someone who seeks to control it or boss it. I think it's someone who is willing to work hard and represent our members' views from a member's perspective, understanding what they're going through, understanding what their needs are, understanding what their aims and ambitions are and what they want from the union. And that's what Paul is about. And that's why I backed him, because I want someone who's going to restore power to the members in our union. I want someone to, well, it's almost like I've said it before, it's like reclaiming the soul of our union, because when I was in NUPE and then we set up UNISON with the merger of the different unions, COSI, NALGO and NUPE, the whole point of it was we had a long tradition of being a member-led union. And we seem to have lost that along the way. And somehow, I don't want to be disparaging to anyone, but somehow the bureaucrats took over. And as a result of that, I think a lot of our members have been pretty disillusioned, but also I think a lot of our members have been pretty badly served, but also a lot of our members have felt, well, the union isn't there to back me. And that's why at times, in some instances, there hasn't really been the support for the action that's needed by this union. So what Paul is doing is he's standing as the members' candidate. And I like the way he's argued that the most important thing for a general secretary is, of course, when you win a position like that, you win power. But his whole point of winning is to give power back to the members, and in particular, use our structures effectively, give power back to the branches, but make sure they're properly resourced so that the people who are at the front line, who are doing the work, who really making sure that our members are represented and they're speaking up for them and negotiating for them and looking after their concerns are properly resourced and backed up at every time as well. And you know, when I was a shop steward and in other campaigns that I've been in, you always want to be able to look over your shoulder and think, I've got the support of this union. Well, at times, I'm afraid a number of our members have not had that recently. And I think that's what Paul will restore, that confidence on our members that they'll always have the backing of the union and that they'll have our support. And as a result of that, you gain strength through that solidarity, and you win. You win. And I tell you, we need some wins. It's been a long period of austerity, 10 years, where as average wage levels in this country are below the level of the banking crash, 2007, 2008. And I don't think anyone's been hit harder than us in terms of our members across the public sector, in the way in which wages have been virtually at a standstill, but also the erosion of the terms of employment and conditions of that our members work in. But in addition, of course, that privatisation and outsourcing, that's gone on apace. But we've got to halt that, and we will only halt that by using the strength of this union. And we'll only be able to mobilise the strength of that union if we have a general secretary who will properly and truly represent and mobilise our members. We're a big union, we're a huge union, and so we need to make sure we're exercising that strength, both in terms of our negotiations with our employers, but also I have to say in terms of the development of policies in government as well. And that means using our influence effectively and within the Labour Party. And that's what Paul is all about. So I'm really pleased to be able to open up tonight's meeting. I've got to nip off later and just speak at a housing meeting where, again, we're launching housing campaigns to prevent evictions and support renters. And again, I just want to say this as well. On every campaign I've been involved in, when I've asked for Paul's support, it's a progressive campaign supporting working class people, he's always there. You don't have to ask twice. He's always there, absolutely solid in support with people who are at the sharp end of these campaigns. And that's the other thing about him that I admire, that he's solid, absolutely always supportive whenever you need him. Yeah, we all get knocked down a few times, but he comes bouncing back and always will support us. So I've been grateful to be able to participate in these meetings as a UNISON member, but also because I think Paul Holmes is the General Secretary that we want. And what I'd like to do now is Dan Carter will be chairing this meeting from here on in. But I think our next speaker is going to be Paul, isn't it, if I've got that right? Yeah. Okay, can I pass over to Paul then? I'll just say to people, recognise this is the most important election in this union for decades. So if you like what you hear from Paul, back him. But make sure you talk to others and encourage them to back him. Because, well, we need him. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, John. This meeting, I'm pleased to say, is open to anyone. I've got to start off with something. My name's Paul Holmes. I'm going to start off with something that's disappointed me, and I don't often do that. But what's disappointed me a little bit in this campaign, not among the ordinary rank and file members, very, very rarely do they disappoint me if ever, has been the attitude of one or two people who I've heard over the last 20 years argue about the principle of a lay member-led union, who deep down, when you dig into their argument, don't believe a lay member could be the General Secretary. They don't. And if you don't believe, I put on every manifesto I've ever stood on for election in this union, I'm a socialist and a trade unionist. I always put that because I am. The only thing that might differ is I might change which way around I put it. And if you're a socialist, you believe there's hundreds of people can do any job. There is no job above what ordinary working people can do. And the rule book enshrines that we're a lay member-led union. But I'm not sure the minds of everybody at the top of this union has that same thing. So I am a member. I've never been anything but a member. I've been a member for over 40 years. I've been a steward for 40 years. I've been the branch secretary of one of the 10 biggest branches for 31 years. And I've been on the NEC for 15 years, and I've been elected 7 times. And I've been on the national pay negotiations. And well, that shows a breadth of experience, as does the fact that of the 7 service groups in UNISON, I've been the branch secretary of branches that's had members in 5 of them. Police, universities, water, environment, local government, community and voluntary sector. So I've got a breadth of experience, but I could have sat on chairs at meetings, couldn't I, and done nothing and gained nothing from my experience. What you need to add to experience is what have you done? What actions have you taken? And I think in our branch in Kirklees, we've been a model for Yorkshire and the country, really, and the countries about how a branch should be organised. We've had 3 major disputes in the last 6 years, strikes involving over 1,000 members. We had 750 business support officers, of which over 70% were part-time female and over 90% were female, where the council said they wanted 250 people to go and 150 would be compulsory redundant. after a 2-day strike, we came to a deal where there were no compulsory redundancies at all. We had a children's social work strike in 2017, where 200 children's social workers came out and support staff came out on strike over staffing levels, bullying, agency staff. 2-day strike, again, complete success. Got rid of agency staff, got rid of agency managers, got full-time staffing, got workloads measured and reduced. And then in 2018, we had the sort of quite famous, really, bin workers strike in Kirklees, where the members walked out illegally. Well, that's what the law would describe it as. I think our members were being bullied illegally, would be my description of the situation. Over where 25% of the workers were Afro-Caribbean, and they were just a catalogue of racist harassment and bullying. And the members came out for a week, and they then made it clear they wanted to come out indefinitely. We got a 92% turnout and 88% yes vote. And when they voted to come out indefinitely, the management collapsed, removed 2 managers, and we won the dispute. So we've got a great record of success in our branch. And I've done that as part of a team. I think it's really important that in this campaign, I never refer to my campaign. I only refer to our campaign, because I think you represent something. If you don't represent something, you actually think we're electing a king or a queen of UNISON, which we're not doing. In the council, in Kirklees Council, which is far and away the major employer, probably between 5,000 and 6,000 members in that council. In the 31 years I've been branch secretary, we've had 1 compulsory redundancy, and that was of a woman who turned down 26 redeployment opportunities on her same grade. I don't belittle her, but it was hard to win the ballot on that one in that situation. So I've got a record of organising, but you can only organise with other people. And I've said this every meeting I spoke at, is that the union only consists of the branches and the members, consists of nothing else. And if you think it consists of anything else, you're wrong. The national union, the regional union, the national delegate conference, the welfare, Croyd Bay, is all support for the branches and the members. Even organise itself on a national or a regional level is organising the branches, it's speaking to each other. That's what we should be allowed to do. And any branch secretary will tell you they're being warned off about speaking to somebody about something. And, you know, I have never spoken to a branch secretary ever without learning something. That's the basis of debate. You learn things. And so I'm firmly of the opinion that the current average of less than 25% of the subscriptions going to the branch should be doubled to at least 50% going to the branches, because that's where the work is. Actually, if you ask the members how much money the branches got, they'd think they get more than that. They do 90% of the work, they should get at least 50% of the subscriptions, and they should get it in a different way than they get it now. At the moment, they get an entitlement, then they have to beg or plead for an extra amount of money. Well, that's not what it's about. You know, we've got to change this union from a can't and won't union to a can and will union. And one way to doing that is to give the 50% of the money to the branches and say to them, look, it's your decision whether you use it on employing staff or getting a bigger office or getting caseworkers or getting local organisers, or you want to purchase a different building or whatever you want to do. That's your decision. As long as your branch has made that decision, that's fine. But the resources are coming to you. Because at this moment in time, if you ask the majority of branch secretaries, certainly in local government or the voluntary sector, do you want a new employer with 6 members there? They'd say no. They'd say, I can't deal with the members we've got now and the problems we've got now. In Kirklees, when I became branch secretary in 1989, with 2 employers, with 208 now. And loads of them employers, it's not just a question of the fact that they're not mainstream employers, but there's no disciplinary procedure, there's no grievance procedure, there's no collective bargaining rights. When you get the phone call from these places and say, oh, can you send us a copy of disciplinary procedure or grievance procedure? These private care homes that are run by hedge funds and investment brokers just look at you going out. They're not interested. So for the union, for me, we're not a business. We're not collecting subscriptions. That's not the aim of the game. The assets of the union are the pay, the terms and conditions, and the pensions of the members. They're the assets. And every single bit of our resources should be thrown at that to defend and expand that. And I will do this job as General Secretary on £32,000 a year, not because I want to outbid somebody and how low the wage should be, or I'm a saint, or I'm a hair shirt, or a sacrificial person. That's what I earn in the council as legal officer. That's what I do the branch secretary job on. The same terms, conditions, and pay and pension of my members. And I would be guilty being a general secretary on the current salary between 130, current benefits of between 130 and 140,000. Couldn't do it. I want to be like the other 300, 400, 500, 600 branch secretaries in UNISON who do it for their working wage. There's nothing wrong with it. It's fine. And if I want to get a higher wage, then we should improve the wages of the members that we represent. And it's as simple as that. And I also believe that there's an unhealthy relationship grown up in the union between people who are employed by the union and people who are full-time off in the union and occupying national positions. It's almost become like in the councils, where sometimes you go into some Labour councils in Yorkshire, and you can't tell the difference between the cabinet members who are councillors and the chief officers. They mix, they act, they look the same. And it's a completely different role. I am absolutely happy with the employed staff being on agreed terms and conditions for employment in UNISON. But if you're employed in UNISON, you're an employee, just like you are in the council. If you want to be the general secretary or the assistant general secretaries or the regional secretaries, then that should be an elected position. That should be open and accountable to the membership. And that might appear like a radical position to people who's only known UNISON. But in the majority of the unions leading up to the formation of UNISON, the officials were elected. You know, in the Amalgamated Engineering Union, which were a massive union in Wakefield and around the country in Yorkshire, Lancashire, Scotland, all their district officials were elected. Never mind the national officials, the district officials were elected. And that's what we should be in favour of. Because there's one word I always want to talk about, is democracy. If, you know, I said it every meeting, I'm going to say it later on in this meeting. When's a decision going to be made? Who's it going to be made by? Who's going to make that decision? What's the forum? And how do you report it back to the members? Members need to know all that. And too often the members read in the paper or see on the news what UNISON has decided to do, who they've decided to nominate, etc., etc. So that's going to end. Our decisions and our forums and our negotiating body is going to be open for everybody to see. And anybody can stand for the positions in the union. I am up to here with hearing, oh, I'd like to encourage that person, but I think they might be in that party, or I think they might have supported somebody else in the past. That is the road to nowhere. That is the road to creating a barren desert of no activity. What we want is people with commitment, enthusiasm and zeal. So I'm committed to setting up a leadership school where if you're keen, and you've got enthusiasm and you want to learn, you'll be encouraged to learn and nobody will be questioning what your political affiliations are. Because this union is the biggest in Britain, but our members don't think it is. And it doesn't act like the biggest union in Britain. It acts like it's small. It doesn't shout. It doesn't fight on the front foot. We've got to be on the front foot. When a health and safety rep or a steward says at work, or the union's recommended we don't bring this bin wagon out because it's not safe, or we haven't got the right PPE, so we're not working. That steward and that health and safety rep's got to know that the General Secretary and the organs of this union have got the back. And I'm telling you, we've got your back. We are going to cover you and back you what you say. That's where we are. If we're asking somebody to stand up and say, I'm fighting this library closure, or I'm fighting this privatisation of this adult care centre, you've got to know that this union supports you, that this union will be on the picket line, and this union will back you out. There's a situation in Hull at the minute where the steward led a strike there over terms and conditions 2 years ago, and he's been victimised and sacked now. I'm fully behind him. I've made it clear that I'm fully behind him. We've all got to do that because we've got to act big. And we've got to act. We haven't been on Question Time from UNISON for 20 years. It's the most watched political programme in Britain. The viewing figures are 3.5 to 4 million. And thousands upon thousands of our members will watch that programme. And we've turned down the opportunity to be on it. Now, as I said, it's not the king or queen of UNISON we're electing. If the issue affects a region, if it affects a service group, if it affects a branch, then the person from there should be on the telly. We're not worried what so-and-so is going to say. We have a debate, what the union's position is, and then the reps will show that. They've got to do that. We've got to show that we're a human face. We're not some sort of everything. This pantomime that exists in the Labour Party and the unions, that's created by the Daily Mail and the Sun and the television programmes, that somehow he's a goodie and she's a baddie, he's this. that it's some sort of Dallas soap opera. We've got to get rid of that. We've got to get a debate about what conditions are our members working under. If you said to me, what do health service workers think? I'll tell you now what they think. They want to get back to normal, like the rest of the country do. They want to get back to normal. They're knackered. They've been frightened for 6 months. They want their holidays. And they feel like they've had their noses rubbed in it, not getting a decent pay rise. Now, that's what we ought to be saying. Not worried about people, I'm not worried. I don't think Bob Crow were worried what people thought about his leadership of the RMT. He were only worried about what the members thought. I once saw Bob Crow on a train from London to Wakefield. As soon as he got on the train, put his bag down on his chair. I didn't see him again for the next hour because he were up and down the train, talking to the train staff, asking them what the problems were. He was one of them. He understood the issues and he wanted to, and that's what I want our General Secretary to be. Somebody who's from the coalface. And the time's come for a lay member to be the General Secretary. And if, you know, it's quite an interesting meeting tonight. You know, it's been heartwarming for the activists to find activists from Northern Ireland. Because by and large, I don't think that a Northern Ireland branch has ever nominated a lay candidate in a General Secretary election, ever. It's been absolutely heartwarming to do that. But the members, whether they're in Northern Ireland, Scotland or Wales, whether they're in the health service or in the police and justice staff, faced by the same problems. They're faced by the same problems and they're faced by the same types of employers. They might have a different colour on the rosette. They might have a different political name on the programme. But at the end of the day, they're following what Winston Churchill said, never waste a good crisis. There was a financial crisis before this coronavirus started. There is during it, and there's definitely going to be one at the end. So I've drawn remarks to a conclusion that what's going to be the music. The employers talk to each other all the time. It's only us that are advised not to. The employers are absolutely enraptured with fire and rehire. Suddenly, privatisation, outsourcing, setting new starters on almost isn't fast enough for them, isn't fast enough for the cuts that they want to make. So in Tower Hamlets, that should have been, every UNISON member should know about that dispute. That they're going to issue notices that say in 3 months' time, you go into worse terms and conditions, or you leave without redundancy payment, or without paying lower notice. And we've got to organise for that. Because in the first 10 fire and rehire disputes that UNISON are involved in, if you win the first 10, you've won the next 300. And if you lose the first 10, you've lost the next 300. That's how we need to see it. We need to, you know, it were years after the miners' strike, which 1984-5. 10 years later, were people saying, how can we win when the miners couldn't win and they're the strongest? That cloud came over us for 10 years. And we need to be saying that Tower Hamlets we're 100% behind it. We need to be saying if British Gas do the same thing which they're promising to do, we're behind it. We should be publicising the University of Sheffield, who have rebuffed the firing and rehiring. So, draw remarks to a conclusion. I'm really glad we're having this meeting tonight. I'm really glad it's open to the people in Northern Ireland, Wales, and Scotland. Member on. If you're not a member, join the union. But this is a General Secretary for the whole union. I don't want anybody to think that it's some sort of England-centric or local government-centric or health-centric. You know, at the end of the day, I've made my position on the second referendum in Scotland perfectly clear. The issues, it's about democracy. John McDonnell's right. You're given power in the election to give it out to the members and the branches for them to utilise on their behalf. This pantomime about this General Secretary doesn't like that General Secretary, I'm not interested. If I had one wish at the NEC, it was that I could go to another NEC meeting where somebody doesn't say, in a leading position in this union, refer to competitor unions. There are no competitor unions. There's brothers and sisters in other unions that we need to work with. And I am standing to be a lay member of a lay member-led union because it's time for one. It's time for somebody to understand that the times have radically changed and the union needs to do as well. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks ever so much, Paul. That's brilliant. My name's Dan Sartin. I'm on the NEC, but I'm speaking tonight in a personal capacity and chairing this meeting in a personal capacity. I'm West Sussex Branch Secretary and supporting our campaign, Paul's campaign, to be General Secretary of UNISON. I've been asked to chair because John McDonnell had to leave tonight to go to another meeting, which was unexpected. But I want to thank John, and I want to pay tribute to what he's done for this campaign, because he's given us absolutely amazing support. He'll be chairing his 10th meeting, his 10th public meeting tomorrow night, and it's absolutely tremendous. But you heard John's passion about why he's supporting Paul earlier, and he summed it up for me when he said we need a servant. We need somebody as General Secretary who will be a servant of the union and not someone who will try and control it. And that's absolutely right. And that is a prize so big, we have to fight. We have to throw everything at it to secure that. So I'm going to chair this meeting. It's a public meeting. It's the Celtic Call. We've got 3 brilliant speakers lined up. And the next one I'm going to introduce straight away is Nimi Trivedi, who's a social worker and an anti-racism activist from the Carmarthenshire branch. Over to you, Nimi.
Okay, hi, thank you. So welcome from Wales, and just to say that I'm very pleased to be speaking on this forum, on this platform in support of Paul. So I'll just start by saying that Wales is a country that was built by migrants, and many, many people came to Wales in order to better their lives, to work here. It was the first centre in terms of the Industrial Revolution. Lots of people also came through the docks, so in places like Cardiff, Newport, elsewhere. And people of my generations came from the former British colonies in order to contribute to this British society, to work and to build our fantastic NHS. So Wales is a multiracial, diverse community. And just like everywhere else, Wales has also seen some massive rise in protest against racism, which has been linked to the Black Lives Matter movement, which has arisen. And we've seen demonstrations from places like Abergavenny to Fishguard and many, many other places where there's never been any protests like that before. And the reasons for that is obviously it's the events in America and the death of George Floyd and everything that's happened there and is happening there, but also COVID-19, which has devastated people's lives. So disproportionately, deaths of Black people, Asian people, and of other minority ethnic people COVID has disproportionately killed people in that community, our community. And I believe that our union should have done much, much more in order to protect our members. Our union had the opportunity to shape the response just like the teachers have done. And this is the reason, this is the first sort of reason I'm backing Paul, because, you know, as has been said already, I think, in many, many meetings, and sort of the message really that Paul represents a break from the timidity that's affected our unions for many, many years. That's the message that really comes across when Paul speaks and when other people speak in his support, and everything is just sort of laid out really. The other thing I'd just like to say is I would like UNISON and other unions to do, amongst other things, 2 things. Continue to silence the racists through actions such as opposing the far right, such as campaigning in support of refugees, issues like removing the statues that represent slavery, a campaign we have going in Carmarthenshire as well, and of course fighting racism in workplaces wherever it arises in whichever shape or form. And again, Paul has a fantastic record of supporting actions against racism, as he outlined clearly earlier in terms of his own, you know, about Kirklees Branch leading that fight against bullying and racism back in 2018. And I'm sure he will continue to do so. I have every confidence in that. But much, much more than that. Unions need to do much, much more than that. Wales, a massive industrial country, as I've said, and devastation that is happening elsewhere, has happened elsewhere in terms of industries, also happened in Wales. So the copper that Wales was famous for, Swansea was famous for, has gone. Coal has gone and steel is also going, and huge economic crisis is coming. The pandemic is going to bring that, and we've talked about that time and time again. So we are going to need a real fight back from our union to defend our jobs, to defend our members' jobs, to defend our services, to stop that devastation from ruining people's lives. And collective action can shift in terms of that defense, but also shift the middle ground of people who may be listening to the voices of the racist. So leading a fight back is the best way to undermine racism and fight for jobs for everybody. Now, the problem seems to me that, you know, our general secretaries in the past and more recently have presented themselves a bit like the Formula One drivers. So inevitably, they will blame the whole team when they don't win the race. But the truth is that our leadership up till now have not been racing for our futures, I would say. Actually, they've been going round and round and round, and we need to get off that track. We need to get off that track, and Paul is showing us clearly that he is prepared to get off that track, that he is a lay member, is prepared, he's very much keyed into what is important to ordinary members. Lastly, just to say that pessimism, it's pessimism to say that we have to vote for the least worst or the electable person, and that we shouldn't be bold, we shouldn't be radical. I say actually now is the time to be radical. Now is the time to be bold and optimistic, and that comes through very clearly through what Paul has talked about. His record speaks for itself. I understand that the last few general secretary elections have had a very low turnout and haven't managed to, the union hasn't managed to unite people and inspire people to vote. I think we need to shift that. And again, this is the campaign about that. An inspirational campaign can mobilize a good vote, can unite those who want to see those changes that we are talking about. And we have a real chance to do that now with Paul leading that. And we should take that chance. So we need a fight. We need a fight back now. We need a fight back, fighting union for all Welsh workers, for all Scottish, Irish, and all workers in Britain. And we stand for internationalism as well, obviously. We need to fight for job services, which is also linked fight against racism. So for all those reasons, I'm supporting Paul Holmes, and I would urge you to do the same and take the campaign back into your branches. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Nimi. That was brilliant. And do chip in later during the questions if there's something you want to comment on. I think you're so right. We've got to increase the turnout. And at the end of the meeting, I'll be talking about a few of the ways we'd like people to get involved with this campaign to help us do just that. We'll move straight on now to our next speaker. That's Niall McCarroll. He's the branch chair from the Community and Voluntary Sector Branch Northern Ireland. And there was great news coming out of that branch a week or two ago, because they became the first branch from Northern Ireland to ever nominate a lay member for General Secretary. So really groundbreaking stuff. So we're delighted to have Niall join us tonight. Over to you, Niall.
Hello, Dan. Thank you. Hello, everybody from Ireland. And I agree with Mimi and her remarks there that we all should take racism and all its avenues seriously, and we should all challenge it. And it should be the heart of every branch within the union. So my name is Niall McCarroll. I've been a trade union card holder all my working life. And I'm the current UNISON Community Branch chairperson in the north of Ireland. I've always worked in the community sector, work which involves supporting and standing up for marginalised and vulnerable individuals and families. By its very nature, this work is challenging, complex, and it takes its toll, leaving UNISON members working in the community overworked, stressed, and struggling within a system which not only cares nothing for those we support, but this establishment system chooses to also undervalue our work and indeed refers to it as unskilled and of less value to society than financiers and bankers. Of course, we all witnessed during the current public health emergency just how skilled and important frontline community sector workers are and their real worth to communities and society. Equally, trade unionists and socialists know this narrative coming from the bosses and the mouthpieces within the golden circle political classes is deliberate and driven by a corrupt ideology of capitalism. And this continues with little resistance, with few concessions. This narrative needs change, and this will only come about from mobilising working class people, mobilising communities through a radical trade union movement. We need to move away from boardroom discussions with the bosses and government departments. Instead, we as trade union activists need to build our own table, rebalance the power, and we decide who gets a chair at any discussion on how the wealth is distributed. Equally, inequality and the standard of living gap increases. It increases even with our union having 1.3 million members who, given the chance to lead, would rise up and begin a much needed revolution. Paul Holmes can be that defiant and vocal General Secretary that workers need, that society needs. UNISON members need to take this opportunity to elect a radical, one of our own, leader. This opportunity only comes along every 5 years. Make the next 5 years historic. Make the next 5 years the years that UNISON truly begins to fight back against the establishment. I encourage everyone to vote Paul Holmes, and like our branch done, let's get behind the campaign and let's once and for all change our union for the better and mobilise so we can change things for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Niall. Super stuff. Absolutely right. That's what we need. We need a revolution within UNISON, and there'll be no better way of signalling than we actually finally have a lay member leading this union, this member-led union of ours, supposedly. So I'm sure we can do that, and that's what this campaign is about. The final speaker before we go to questions is Maggie McGuire. She's the treasurer from Dundee City branch, and she's also on the Scottish committee. So Maggie, over to you.
Hi, thank you. Evening everybody, greetings from Bonnie Dundee, which is apparently the sunniest city in Scotland. It was quite nice here today, I have to say. I'm a local government worker and have been for more years than I care to mention. And I'm supporting Paul in the General Secretary's election. And why? Because I believe Paul is the only credible candidate to lead our union. I couldn't agree more with Paul when he says UNISON is not fit for purpose. Our union is supposed to be a lay member-led organisation, and I'm not seeing very much of that at the moment. In fact, just the opposite. Someone referred to the existing leadership as the London bubble, and my opinion is the London bubble is out of touch with the majority of our members. Enough is enough. We need to elect a General Secretary who will put our members first. We need a strong leader who understands the struggles and workplace conditions our members are faced with. Paul is that leader. Paul's track record speaks for itself. He is an ordinary rank and file member like the rest of us. 31 years as a branch secretary of a successful branch is an outstanding achievement on its own. Add to that the representation record he has, and it's very impressive. Paul understands the struggles branches have when it comes to both local and national disputes. The union is failing to provide the necessary resources to branches to let them do their job, and that is to represent members. Facility time is being attacked the length and breadth of the country, and what does London do? Ignore it. We need the support to allow us to represent our members. Paul, as General Secretary, will redistribute the funding where it is needed most. Branches are at the heart of this union, yet resource-wise, we are well down the pecking order. Only one of the candidates pledges to change that. It's all fine and well that resources such as fighting fund organisers were made available to assist with recruitment and retention and organising in areas where it is difficult for us in local government activists to support. However, the hoops we needed to jump through to make that happen were ludicrous. My branch wanted to be involved with the project, and any help being offered to us was warmly accepted. The matrix used to apply for funding was onerous, and once you fought your way through the red tape and you had your application approved, we thought, yep, that's it, we're good to go. We were extremely lucky to be allocated an ex-local member who had bright ideas and the absolute brassiness to waltz into workplaces and engage with both members and non-members. Employers even warmed to her cheeky ways. She made a fantastic difference in our branch. However, all good things have to come to an end. Being a temporary employee who had their contract extended a number of times, all the good work they had done for the branch was lost. Why? Because the union would not make the contract permanent, and the individual's contract was terminated before UNISON would have to do that. If branches had more control over a bigger portion of our funds, then we as a branch would have the opportunity to make the decision as to whether to continue to employ a much needed member of our team. Paul's manifesto would allow branches to have that opportunity. No other candidate will do the same. Reserves held by branches is another key point which needs addressing. It's a true saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. We must spend the funding we have in the allocation year. Sometimes this can be difficult, and as such, branches will scramble to spend money to ensure there is no reduction in their funding the following year. In local government, 3-year funding settlements are the norm. Well, certainly in Scotland. Pay settlements are usually 3-year deals as well. This allows the employer to plan longer term instead of year on year. Why can our branches not be afforded the same? Branches could then plan more spending priorities over a longer period if ruling on reserves is changed. I firmly believe that Paul would work tirelessly to make that happen. Can any other candidate say the same? I think not. Paul listens and supports his members both at local and NEC level. He can relate to the issues we as members have because he is one of us. He always will be one of us. Paul is not a paid employee on an inflated salary. He, like most of us, realise that most of our members are low-paid women. How can anyone on a salary of 130,000 understand or relate to our working class members? Paul has the membership's best interest at heart. That really can't be said of the London bubble. Paul's manifesto is everything I expect of our union. I don't believe my expectations are too high. This is exactly what my and our members expect and deserve. The time has come to reclaim our union, get back to grassroots. I believe the only way to achieve this is to elect Paul as General Secretary and rebuild this union for our members. And that will be the message I will be giving out to mine. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you, Maggie. That was absolutely superb. Thank you so much. All three speakers have been fabulous tonight. For me personally, I think we should have a treasurer on speaking every night because I love to talk about the money too, Maggie. Also, the bureaucracy in our union, as a treasurer, you know more than anyone how staggering it is. The hoops branches have to jump through. You know, what is that about? It can only about control. There can be no other rationale for it. UNISON hasn't changed in 25 years. And when Paul wins this election, that is going to be the big task in front of us, is making this union fit for purpose after the neglect it's had. So I'm really thrilled with all your speeches. Thank you so much. We'll go to questions now. And again, as I said previously, do chip in if you all want to chip in. First question, though, we've had this a few times come in on the email. It's because of yesterday's NEC meeting. So I do want to put the question straight to Paul. The question is, I'm shocked to read accounts online of yesterday's NEC meeting. How do we improve our democratic practices in UNISON? You might have to give a bit of context there, Paul, just in case people aren't aware.
Yeah, well, this was foresight, not hindsight. As I said at the beginning of this meeting, I've said it at several meetings when I've been asked the question about democracy. You need to know what is the process, how do you follow the process, where's the decision going to be made, how's the decision going to be made, and how is it going to be reported back. That is about, the question was often about who we nominated in the Labour Party leadership election, but it could be about anything we discuss in the union. Now, at yesterday's NEC meeting, which I wasn't present at, I can only report what people have said to me or what I've read online. But I have been to, well, I don't know, I would have been to between 75 and over 100 NEC meetings and taken place in hundreds of votes. And every vote we've ever had on the NEC has been first past the post. Never voted under any other system. In fact, there was an attempt at the 2016 conference to put motions to the rule changes to the conference floor that the General Secretary election should take place by a transferable voting system, and they were ruled out of order. So, coming up to yesterday's meeting, which was at 11 o'clock yesterday morning, yesterday's NEC meeting, which was to decide who, if anybody, the NEC wanted to nominate from the 5 candidates who were official candidates in the election, just like any branch could do, any region could do, or any service group could do. I was trying my best, as were other people, to find out if the meeting would be a hustings meeting, i.e., would the candidates be speaking there? Now, anybody's been involved in this campaign, there have been a lot of hustings meetings. I think we've probably got up to about 70 now, which is phenomenal. When I started in 2010, they were lucky if there were a dozen, but they're easier to organise now for branches because they don't involve travel. They're not as good meetings, but they're easier to organise. So I couldn't find out if it were a hustings meeting or not. There was no information as to whether it was or it wasn't. And as far as I'm aware from the people that went, the meeting started at 11 o'clock when it was due to start, and a debate then took place, perhaps quarter of an hour, 20 minutes into the meeting, as to whether the voting system should be an exhaustive system or a first past the post. Now, there's no way in my world that I live in, the result is the result. That's how it is. I've said from the beginning of this situation that I won't be questioning results in branches on the basis that people have tried their best, and that's what the situation is. As far as I understand it yesterday, after 20 minutes, they then spent another hour discussing the voting system, and that they voted for having an exhaustive ballot, which would mean we would seek nominations, then people would drop out in each round of the election. As I say, I wasn't there, so I can't repeat this. Reporters. Now, the 5 candidates who were standing each produced a letter of seeking nomination that they sent round to all the branches. Well, they sent it as their own affair, but I certainly sent it to every branch twice, by email and by post. But they weren't distributed to the NEC, which I think is really unfair on Peter Sharma. It's up for Peter to speak for himself, but the other 4 candidates are either assistant general secretaries or members of the national executive. But he isn't. He's a lay member in Scotland who I've never heard of or seen before this election. He's entitled to stand, as is anybody else. But none of the manifestos or letters seeking nomination were circulated. I understand that the reason for that was that everybody knew who they were voting for. This is at the highest meeting in the union. Then people were asked after the vote for an exhaustive ballot, which it appeared that some people before the meeting knew that was going to be on debate, but others didn't. And I think everybody going into the meeting should have the same level of information. I've never been at a meeting where somebody changed the voting system an hour into the meeting from any other voting you've ever had before, and it would certainly be on the agenda. That's what you were doing. I didn't see the agenda. But then proposers and seconders of candidates couldn't speak, and the candidates weren't invited to speak, and nobody could discuss the candidates. So the meeting lasted 2.5 hours. I have no idea what we discussed other than the bureaucracy of the meeting and how people voted. And the first round was, as far as I understand it, I'm only reporting, there's been no official reporting, was 22 for me, 22 for Christina, 12 for Roger, and 4 for Hugo. Peter didn't receive a nomination as far as I understand it. On the second ballot, I got 25, Christina got 23, Roger got, I think he dropped down 1 to 11, then he dropped out, and then on the third ballot, Christina got 29 and I got 26, and 5 people abstained. Now, at no point in the meeting that lasted 2.5 hours was there a debate about the merits of the candidates for the most important job in the union. And I make no comment on the voting system they used. Everybody, I don't live in this world where you hit people over the head with what should and shouldn't have happened. As long as it's reported back to people, they'll have their view about what did and didn't happen and what should and shouldn't have happened. They can come to them conclusions, the results. But how the NEC can nominate without, as far as I understand it, I say I wasn't there, without any discussion of the candidates for the main job in the union. Now, I've been really clear, absolutely clear throughout this campaign before yesterday, that I think that the nomination process for this for the future General Secretary elections should be launched at the National Delegate Conference. There should be a 2-hour session at the conference where anybody who wants to be a candidate speaks at a hustings meeting. They can't nominate there, but then 2,500 delegates, which would include the majority of branch secretaries, would be going back to the branches, knowing what the issues were, knowing what the candidates were, and setting up a campaign that meant something to the branches, not having a meeting where we don't discuss the merits of the candidates. And the NEC makes the decisions that the NEC makes, and those people who find out what's happened have their view on what's happened, and that's my view of what happened yesterday.
Thanks. Thanks ever so much, Paul. I mean, I was in that meeting yesterday. I'm not going to talk about it, but I do know that our NEC meetings, particularly NEC meetings that are pivotal in the life of our union, such as the one yesterday to nominate a general secretary candidate, they should be an absolute showcase for our union's democracy, an absolute advert for it. And what happened yesterday certainly couldn't be described as that. I think most members would be quite shocked if they could actually see what happened in those meetings. For that question, I will move on, I think, after that, because I think it's appropriate. Next question, though. How do good branch activists get out from under the weight of casework?
Well, I think I've touched on that in my letter seeking nomination and in tonight's meeting. But in a branch, you need to start from the base. You know, in a lot of branches, the casework for non-central employees is often bigger than for the main employer, because often, you know, however much we criticise a council or a hospital, often they do have some procedures. The argument is, are they following them or not? In the voluntary and private sector, they haven't got any procedures, they don't want any procedures, and they certainly don't want you coming through their door. So for me, the answer is not to recruit 3 more members. If I get told one more time from headquarters that Kirklees is in Scotland, because it starts with K-I-R-K, I get a 10 pat. Perhaps people don't understand what Kirk means in Scotland, but I certainly do. But, you know, I get calls from headquarters about, you know, which part of Scotland are we in? And for me, what we should be saying to each branch that is faced with private and voluntary sectors is, look, we're going to pick 3 employers where we haven't got recognition, and we're going to mount a campaign on them 3 employers, and we're going to say, we're going to write to your patrons if you're a voluntary sector, we're going to write to the local newspapers, we're going to leaflet the building, we're going to talk to the staff there, we're going to hold a meeting safe, and if things change in a local pub or village hall or whatever it is, to get recognition rights for you. Because we can't ask members to pay full subscriptions when they're not getting a full service, and you're not getting a full service if they're in collective bargaining rights there, if they're in disciplinary and grievance procedures, etc., etc. And that would start to remove casework. Casework is often a defeat. You're just trying to save something from a situation where you've got no power. And I've used this example before, I'll keep it. You know, most NUM officials that I know, after the 72 and 74 strike, didn't do many disciplinaries or grievances for the next 10 years. Because they won that dispute, they got back up the pay league, and they had some power and influence in the workplace. After the 1984-5 strike, when they got beat, you couldn't win a disciplinary or casework for love and the money. Everybody was trying to get out of the industry, and you couldn't win anything. And that's what it's about. What power do you wield in the workplace on behalf of your members? You know, if we've got strong membership, we've got strong bargaining rights, we've got good procedures, a phone call to a personal officer can sort things out in a way it would never sort it out in a private care home. And that's how we reduce casework, by getting rid of the individuality of it. You can never get away from gross misconduct disciplinaries. They're always going to take place. But you get rid of the fast situations and get collective bargaining. That's the key, collective bargaining.
Thanks, Paul. Did Nimi or Maggie want to come in? I think Niall's got some problems with his phone.
I don't think I could say anything else that Paul hasn't already said.
Okay, that's fine then. That's fine. We'll leave it with the definitive word. We'll move on to the next question. We've still got time for 2 or 3 more if we're quick. This one is, I think, well, it must have come from a Scottish comrade, I believe. Who knows? But what does Paul think UNISON's attitude should be to the growing calls for a second independence referendum and the possibility of an independent Scotland? You might have a view on that one, though, Maggie, later.
Yeah. Well, I'm careful what I'm going to say about this, because what I think is it's a democratic decision for the people of Scotland and our members in Scotland. And I don't want to wage forth on I think they've got every right to have the second referendum. I fully support the Scottish Regional Council decision, what the decision that they made. I fully support that. And it's their right to decide, absolutely their right. Once you start saying something else, that it's not their right to decide, or you think they should vote this way or that way, then for me, you don't agree with the self-determination that I believe in. So for me, absolutely clear that they've got every right to pass the decision that they made at the Scotland Regional Council. Our members in Scotland have got the right to take that decision. The people of Scotland have got the right to take that decision. And that's democracy. Once you deny the people the right to vote, then you're going down a rocky road.
Okay, thank you. You happy with that one too, Maggie?
Absolutely. He's spot on yet again. He's right. You know, the people of Scotland have got the right to that second referendum if that's what the people of Scotland so chose. And I'm heartened from the fact that Paul is supporting the Scotland's position, but it's down to each and individual member of Scotland to say what they want to happen in the future. And I'm not going to preempt what I think that would be if it ever did get to a second referendum.
Okay, so thanks, Maggie.
Sorry, I was going to say quickly about Wales, if anybody was interested, because obviously we do have a sort of a more of increasing interest in independence in Wales as well. I mean, that issue has been there for a while now, but also the general perception in Wales is that the Welsh government have been better at handling COVID compared to the Johnson government, and can make sort of independent decisions. And you know, there is a new bill that's coming through that's been proposed, which apparently is going to give the British government the right to build the M4 relief road near Newport. There's been a campaign to fight against that, in order to reverse the decision that was previously made. So I think that's really made people very upset. 42% who voted Labour last time are considering voting for independence, and the independence sort of that feeling has gone has increased. There's something like 37% now support independence in Wales as well. So I think people are saying that, you know, generally as trade unionists, we have to, I would say, you know, we support people's right for independence, and I think our union should be supporting that. But moreover, just, you know, how important it is, you know, like I said before, internationalism is really important, isn't it? So as workers from wherever we are, whether it's Wales, Scotland, Ireland, internationally, we need to stand together really to continue doing what we do. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Right. Okay. Next question. Is Paul concerned that the success of UNISON's vast membership of 1.4 million has, through the need to manage this size, professionalised the union away from the core principles of it being member-led and subsequently curbing grassroots activism? So I think that, is it something innate about our size, Paul, that means that we have to be this kind of professionalised, managed union, or is there more we can be doing to become much more grassroots?
By definition, the size of the union, the members would think the size of the union would increase the influence of the union. That's what the members would think, by definition. It's not true, but that's what you would think. If you were in a work depot, there were 120 people there, you'd think the union was stronger if 90 people were in the union than 60 were in the union. That's what you'd think. But it's inextricably linked to democracy. That's what makes it big. The Amalgamated Engineering Union was a massive union in Britain. I think at one point it was up to 1.5–1.75 million members, but it was riddled with democracy. People knew where the district meeting was, they knew where the regional meeting, they knew where the district secretary were, they could go to the meetings. And what's happened, certainly in the last, I'd say post-Blair, really, what's happened, since 97, is that we've switched in a lot of areas, without us members noticing it, to company unionism, which is not what's the terms and conditions of our members or the pay rates of our members, but what's the size of the building we own, what's the prestige of the building we own, what does the bank account look like? How many subscriptions are we getting in? Oh, we've got, you know, that is not the measure. You know, the RMT were a powerful union with 1/10 of the membership we've got because it was democratic and organised to represent its members. The NUM had 1 million members going into the 1926 general strike. So the size is, the density of the membership is important, the size is important, but it's no good just grafting on unions onto other unions. So we've gone down from whatever it is, 100 unions 35 years ago to, you know, less than 20 now. You just graft them on into some monolith that has no democratic responsibility. If you're going to have a section in a union that belongs to gas or electricity, or I don't want to comment on other unions particularly, but then that has to become a sub-union, doesn't it? It has to be able to organise and do its own business. And so the size is only of any relevant importance. It's like a E equals MC squared, really. The size is only important when multiplied by the democracy to equal power and influence.
Super, thanks a lot. Did anybody?
The most scientific I'm going to get tonight.
Yeah, that. I don't know what E equals MC squared stands for.
I do.
I'm going near there. Do Maggie, Nimi, or Niall want to comment on that one? No. No, go on, Nimi. Yeah.
I was just going to say, really, that obviously, whenever issues arise for people which are important, you do get an increase in membership of the union, don't you? Especially with disputes and, for example, things have happened. I'm sure in Paul's sort of experience and mine as well, that UNISON membership has increased, especially around COVID, because people have got so worried about the whole situation. And do hopefully recognise that it's so important to be part of a union, because the attacks which are coming as a result of that, but also the safety issues, the lack of PPE, how the workplaces have not been organised to make it safe to begin with, all of that has led people, certainly where I am anyway, in my branch, people have joined. So yeah, that's it really. I'd just say that, you know, times when the issues sort of arise and the fight back happens is when people join the union and begin to recognise the real sort of power of the union and solidarity and all the rest. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah.
Thanks, Nimi. Okay, now we're over time already, but people are bearing with us. We're actually increasing in size as a meeting at the moment, but that doesn't mean we'll go. We'll ask one more question, then I'll ask Paul to sum up his thoughts, and then I will just wrap up with a few things that we'll be asking you to do. So the final question, and again, please, all speakers who want to chip in, please do. In recent national campaigns, such as national pay campaigns, it's been clear that there's a big difference in confidence between different branches across the regions over the question of taking action. How do we address that problem? Paul, start with you.
Well, if you address a group of members, and I always have this in my head, I'm always thinking in my head, what would 100 bin workers think, or what would 100 home care workers think? You need a litmus test of members to think about. And if they ring you up or they get in touch with you about an issue that they've got, or management say they want to change somebody's work patterns or whatever, you go and see them group of 100 members. And they've only got 2 questions. What plan have you got? Do we believe you can be successful? They're the only 2 questions. And that's the problem on pay. In some branches, and you've got to say in England that the Northwest is a shining example of this, that they've gone out to the branches, the regions of the branches have gone out, they've talked to each other, and they've gone out and they've said, look, this is a crap offer. We think we can organise to improve it. We think we can get strike action, and we get confidence from each other. We've done the business, and they feel confident. In other areas, the members think, I could take you to meet 10 bin workers tomorrow, who always said to me, we don't want to do a day, Paul. A day's useless. We lose a day's pay for no reason. It's just to increase the recruitment figures. And tomorrow, we've got to empty more bins because the work is there for the week. So don't come back to us if it's less than a week, because we know you were serious. So you've got to say you're serious. And in some branches, don't think they are serious, or don't think they've got enough confidence in the members to be serious. That comes from the top. You know, I were heavily involved in the 11-week bin strike in Leeds City Council in 2009, heavily involved as an NEC member of government on behalf of the NEC, speaking at the weekly meetings. And they got confidence from each other. It was joint UNISON GMB strike. They got confidence from the branch. They got confidence that there were national speakers coming from the National Union. They got confidence in the strike pay and the fact that the strike pay turned up. And so it's all about leading on the front foot and building confidence. And you will not get a response from people if they think you're not serious. You know, we've all been there when somebody says, oh, the members are not up to it. The members want better pay. The members want better conditions. The members want protected. You have to tell them how you're going to do it, and they'll back you to believe you.
Thanks. Very much so, about trust and belief. Maggie, Nimi, Niall, do you want to comment on that question?
Nope.
Okay, good. We're happy tonight. So that's great. Well, I'm going to start to wrap it up. We're over time, so I will start to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for coming. It's been a really good turnout, I think. First time we've done a meeting like this for Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland. So thanks ever so much for everybody who's turned out tonight. We are going to email everybody after the meeting, be later tonight, I think, and we'll be saying to you really what you can do to help this campaign. And right now, the most important and most urgent thing is to secure a branch nomination for us. We still have over a week. We've got Friday, tomorrow, and the week after for a branch meeting to take place. You do need to notify your regional office that this meeting is taking place, so you're going to need to do it tomorrow for next Friday, but it can be done. If you can get your branch committee together, then you can hold a branch meeting and nominate Paul Holmes. We also want people to support us on social media. That's really important. So find our Facebook page, find our Twitter, Instagram, all the rest of it, and take part in that and share the content with your friends. Invite your colleagues, invite your friends to like our content, to find out a bit more about Paul Holmes and what his plans mean, not just for our union, but for their lives. So that's what we'd like you to do. We're also going to set up a broadcast social media group, and what that will mean is that we will contact you at a later date and ask you to supply either an email or your mobile phone number to join a WhatsApp group so that we can get a bit more efficient at sharing our social media. That is really going to be important because this campaign is not the establishment campaign. This campaign is the grassroots campaign. It's going to be totally reliant on us to get the message out to members, and that's the only way we can win it. We need to increase that turnout. We need to increase the enthusiasm for this election and get people voting for Paul. So that email will be winging its way to you, and please do get involved with our campaign. And finally, we've got one more event. It's tomorrow. It's the health event. I should say one more. There isn't one more, actually. We've got at least 3 more, but there's only one more this week, thank goodness, from my point of view. And it's the health event tomorrow. We've got a fabulous range of speakers. Do sign up for that. There will be more events later down the line as we get nearer to the ballot itself, with some exciting surprises in store. So I hope you'll be able to join us for those. So that's it. I want to. Oh, Paul, did I?
No.
Yeah, you're all right for me. So I'll wind it up. You didn't have any more you wanted to say?
I had one more thing I wanted to say.
Oh, I am so sorry. Crack on, Paul.
No, you were thinking of the members there, weren't you? Thinking they don't need to hear anymore.
I thought they wanted their teams.
I wanted to finish off really with a quote from Marx, from Groucho Marx, who said, "Never appoint somebody to the job who wants it." And in some respects, they don't want to be the General Secretary. And that's not because they don't believe in it. It's because it's unhealthy to want to be in a job like that, in the job as it currently is. I would want to be in that job to, like John McDonnell says, immediately give leadership, immediately go to, in the first 3 months, I want to go to all 12 regions, meet groups of representatives and explain how the power is going to come away from London to the regions, to the countries, to the branches, so we can start doing the business that we should be doing. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. And yeah, this job of chairing wasn't one I wanted either tonight. And that might explain why I was so keen to close the meeting. So brilliant sum up from Paul there. I hope you've enjoyed it. And hopefully we'll see you tomorrow night. Take care, everyone.